Hey, welcome to another entertaining and educating episode of Canute White, Dr. Canute White on Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. Hey, we have a lot to talk about today. As usual, very interesting topics, very interesting guests. And, you know, today is really a day when we are going to be exploring a topic that has not been mentioned much in the streets. And we are going to talk to someone who would help us to protect ourselves from the situation, and especially our children from the situation. Look, we heard about drugs trafficking. We heard about other form of trafficking besides human trafficking. And this thing about sex worker and labor, it's a challenge as persons are moved from one town to the other, one country to the other, in order to engage in these things. You know, I realized, I heard recently that human trafficking can take place right in your own country, between towns, perhaps communities. That will be clarified by my guest. But it's a thing that we don't talk much about. And can youth exploration, your topic in a podcast, we are going to explore this human trafficking situation today. And I'm going to be having a conversation with my guest, because it's interesting that many persons, as I had said, do not know about it. I know someone who she went to a Caribbean country to work, and she would call to say, "Hey, I can't believe it. I'm locked up in this house, no light, no music, no TV, and my documents, they took it. I am not sure what's going on. How am I going to get back home?" I didn't know back then that it was human trafficking. Yeah, I was very, very young and, perhaps naive, I would want to say, as it relates to these things, right? And know that I know that you are able to know, because we have someone who will tell us, and it's no other than Stephanie Olson. And I'm going to let her into the studio, and we'll have a conversation about this topic. Stephanie,
Hello.
how you doing? You heard me, right? It's a touchy thing,
Yes,
right? Very touchy thing.
absolutely.
But before we go there, Stephanie, I want to know, who is Stephanie?
Yeah,
Just tell me who you are. Let us know that.
you bet. Well, I am a mom of three kids. I'm a wife of a supportive husband, and I'm the CEO of the Set Me Free project, and
Okay.
and a mom of a furry child as well. So I have a
Okay.
dog.
Okay.
Yes, they all
I
keep
love that. I love that.
me.
I love that. Like the children, the dogs can be very amusing, and
That's
it
right.
keep us up. Yeah, man. Of course.
Yes, yes.
Hey, Stephanie, let me go into this a bit though. Your childhood. I don't want you to go too much into it, because at the end I'll be asking you about your traumatic experiences, right?
Mhm.
And maybe it dabbles into your childhood. But just tell us a bit about your childhood. I like to do this to make my listeners, my viewers, be empowered. Say, hey, look at Stephanie now, and look what had happened.
Absolutely. So I was born to a amazing woman, but
Mhm,
very young, and a very abusive father.
mhm.
And I was born, so this was the late 60s. So I was conceived out of wedlock
Okay.
and
Yeah.
in a biracial relationship. And
Okay.
so set me up for some really difficult times. My mom married him, and he was extremely abusive, and
Yeah.
she escaped from that relationship, which is great
Yeah.
for all of us. But
Yeah.
as a little girl, I always wanted that. I wanted to be daddy's little girl, and
Yeah.
he did nothing to contact me, to be in my life. And so as a young child, I always thought, gosh, well, if my own father doesn't love me, I must not be very lovable. And
Yeah.
if my own father doesn't think I have worth, I must not. And so
Yeah.
that kind of began the journey of my life. And through that abandonment of my biological father, she married a wonderful man who
Yeah.
adopted me when I was 6. But he was human, and
Mhm.
it was a very difficult thing for him. And so I kind of spiraled out of control into eating disorders and
Okay.
alcoholism and addiction. And I was in some dating violence situations
Yeah.
in my youth, and sexual violence. And I got married to a man who was
Yeah.
also abusive,
Okay.
and divorced him eventually, and started to get back to
Nice.
healthy and healing. Um,
Nice.
and now I have an amazing husband and three great kids. And but
Cool.
it's still a journey. It was a
Yeah.
journey getting to that place. And as a recovering alcoholic, and recovering from a whole lot of things, including a lot of coffee. So
Right. Yeah.
don't do anything in moderation. But
Right.
it really brought me to a place where I wanted to work primarily with women at the time, who were living their lives in addiction and
Right.
violence, and all of those things. And so that's really how this journey began.
Right. So I see where your childhood is a very pivotal part of, well, naturally. The
Yeah.
psychologist will say that the child is the father of the man.
Right.
Basically, your childhood will dictate, your adulthood journey. But I see where, like me and others, your childhood have dictate a lot of. But
Right.
what is that inspirational message out of your childhood that you'd like to say, hey, this is the message that will empower you and you?
Yeah, I would say, we all experience trauma, every single one of us, and it looks different for each individual, but we can actually take our trauma and turn it into triumph. I'm all about resilience, and
Yeah.
living a life and leadership of resilience. But resilience isn't just, okay, now I've arrived, I'm on the other
Yeah.
side, I'm good. It's
Yeah.
a step by step, and sometimes two steps forward, two steps back. But just know that through those traumatic childhood situations and experiences, there is great hope in
Yeah.
having a healthy and using that trauma to help others in
Yeah.
that journey.
Yeah. I love when you say that, Stephanie. It becomes a cliche when I say on this show that our adversities are not for us, but for somebody else, for some
Yes,
group. We're just being prepared to help them,
I,
so we have to see it like that.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and Stephanie, we're going into the meat of the matter, as we'll say, this whole thing about human trafficking. But what is human trafficking? Let's start there.
Yeah. So human trafficking is literally the buying and selling of a human being for the personal profit and gain of another through force, fraud, or coercion. So it takes three people for it to be trafficking. It takes the trafficker, the buyer, and the
Mhm.
individual being trafficked. And there's always something traded of value. So that could
Okay.
be money, but it could also be drugs. It could be a place to stay. It could be any number of things, but it is literally the buying and selling of a human being.
It's a contract.
It is.
Yeah,
Yes.
with the consideration and so on, the offer. Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, yes. So we realize it's a complex definition. I would think, and I have done a course on human trafficking recently, and I've learned so much. It's the complexity within the concept. But
Yeah.
yeah, you are here to shuffle it out for us a bit. So what is at risk for this trafficking? What is at risk really?
It destroys lives. I think anytime that you are using a human being as a product, it completely destroys an
Mhm.
individual. And I think what and human trafficking can look different in
Okay.
different countries. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important to understand that piece, because what we might see in the in Western society is going to maybe look a little bit different in other areas. But it is important to recognize, especially when we're talking about our youth, that force piece, what we think about human trafficking, which is kidnapping,
Okay.
shipping somewhere else, and I'm trapped in a basement, things like that's what we think about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what we see most often in Western society is what is trafficking that looks a lot different. It's that
Okay.
fraud and coercion piece. And so it's not about the white van coming by and kidnapping, it's about fraud. I'm going to deceive you. And that may be just, I'm going to build a relationship with you. I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you I love you. I'm going to take care of you. And then you're going to do something, maybe even after a year of time spent together, you're going to
Yeah.
do something you would have never thought you would do.
Yeah.
And a lot of traffickers, one of the number one place to find their targets is through social media.
Okay.
And that's where it's happening.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking more about that. But this thing about, I said in my introduction that it's not international, it can be domestic in
Yes.
your community. Talk to me about that a little.
Yes, it is literally in our own backyards.
Right.
And we oftentimes, so I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Americans, so the percentage, I always ask, what percentage of Americans do you think are being trafficked in America? And the answer is about 80%. A lot of people guess that it's a real low number, only about 30%, but it is happening in our own communities with our own community members. And so that's important to understand. And there doesn't need to be transporting somebody in
Okay.
order for there to be trafficking. We have seen young kiddos who are, there was a young gal, for example, who went to
Yeah.
school every day. She was getting straight A's. She would go to her afternoon job. She would come home and do her homework, and she was getting pimped out or
Yeah.
sold by her boyfriend, in air quotes, every
Okay.
night. Mom
Mm-hmm.
and dad had no idea. So that is, we can be at home and be trafficked. And we're seeing an increase in familial trafficking, which is
Yeah.
dads are the traffickers, grandma and grandpas are the traffickers.
Mm. Yeah.
So very different.
Yeah. So this familial concept really means the family.
Yep.
Familial meaning the family. Listeners, you're listening to Can Youth Exploration, your topic in the podcast. I'm Dr. Ken Youth White, sitting in with Stephanie Olson. I want you to listen to her and learn because she understands what's going on. Stephanie, I want to ask you this question. It might sound like a fun question, but look, if human trafficking was an object, how do you describe it?
Was an object,
Yeah.
I would describe it as so you want me to tell you what object I would compare it to?
Right, in your mind. Yeah, yeah, fine.
I would compare it to, I don't know if any of you watch The Walking Dead, right? But I would compare it
Yeah, I
to
like
a
that.
bat with barbed wire around it and very deadly. That's what I would compare it to.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Hey, it's that bad. Okay. How can we protect our kids, our children for that matter, from human
Yeah.
trafficking?
So I think one of the biggest things that we can do, I always say one of the number one ways to prevent human trafficking is building relationships.
Okay.
Traffickers build incredible relationships. We need to build bigger ones and we need to build better ones. And so the bottom line is really teaching our youth and all of us that value piece. You have incredible value, you have
Yeah.
incredible worth, and you have human dignity. And not only do you have human dignity, but everybody around us does. And when we understand that core piece, we can't sell somebody and we can't buy somebody.
Yeah.
That's the foundation. But also, as a parent, it's teaching our kids how to safely navigate social media. So, what are some of the things that we can do to safely navigate social media? And what are the lures of the traffickers? What are some of the tricks of the trade that they use? And how can we be aware of those so we know how to protect ourselves and our kids?
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Stephanie. But my thing is that the adolescence, that period where there's a transition from childhood to adulthood,
Yes,
they're difficult to deal with. So
it's hard.
what you just described to me, what you just said to us, how can we get through the edge of the adolescence?
Yes. Oh, well, so middle school is like a torturous time, right?
Yeah.
And you've got this time period where you are looking for acceptance. You're looking for love. You're looking for somebody to tell you that you're worth something. And now we've got kids that have only known life on social media. So social media is a friend to them. Not only are they posting everything about the things that are going on, and it's a very natural thing to do, but they're asking for, hey, I need an internet best friend so I can have somebody to talk to that won't judge me.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it even more challenging. Adolescence is tough just in and of itself, and it seems like it will last
Yeah.
forever when you're in it.
Mhm.
So to have people who are safe adults and support systems around you to really help be able to process those things is really critical.
Yeah, yeah. Because as you talk, I look back on some household where that female adolescent, she need the sort of a support to be told I love you, by her parents, and she didn't
Right.
get that, so she would gravitate to someone else, with a different agenda. So
Absolutely.
it's rough. But I just like to find out how does trauma affect our lives, really.
Mm.
It really is.
Yeah. Trauma is one of those things that, I mean, it really manifests differently in every person. And sometimes we kind of compare our trauma, but understanding that trauma is trauma is trauma. And there can be
Yeah,
acute trauma, like I'm in a car accident and now I'm traumatized from that
yeah,
situation, a one time thing, or it can be chronic or complex where it's happening over and over again, like sexual abuse or sex trafficking, any of those things. But recognizing that trauma changes who we are as a person. And it really does manifest in ways that we need to be very aware of. And so I always say we want to make sure that we're getting help, recognize our trauma first,
yeah,
and then getting help for that trauma, because that is really, it can be the source of all of those things, addiction and some of the things that were sex trafficking is just a symptom
yeah,
of not having that value and taking care of those traumatic moments and things like that. So yeah,
yeah,
trauma is a big indicator there.
yeah. Uh, Stephanie, in my culture, and I suspect I've seen it a bit around here in Florida as well, but I'm not sure in your state, where you have these children at the stoplights, the traffic lights, um, cleaning windscreen, and being abused verbally and perhaps sexually. We don't know, right?
Right.
How do you associate that with human trafficking? Is it human trafficking?
It certainly can be. So we see a lot of labor trafficking,
Mhm.
and labor trafficking. So sex trafficking is the buying and selling of an individual for sex, obviously, and labor trafficking is the buying and selling of an individual for labor. It can be agriculture, it can be domestic, but it can also be situations like that. We have an increase in the summer of kiddos who are dropped off in the neighborhood, and they're dropped off, first thing in the morning. They're left to their own devices and picked up late at night and told to sell usually it's tubs of just crap, really, and told they need to sell this. And if you sell this, you're going to have your dream of whatever it is. So they go door to door without food, without water. They're kept in a hotel room. They're beaten if they don't make their quota. Those can be considered situations of labor trafficking, and very similar to people washing windows, when you stop at a stoplight and things like that. I think it can look different in a lot of different
Oh
cities
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. You know, you see, we have been talking about a number of things that the ordinary person would not see as a challenge, would not see as human trafficking. So it tells me that this public education as it relates to human trafficking, it's not happening. What do
Right.
you think?
Right. So people love the sensational. And so if there is a kidnapping, especially a kidnapping of a pretty white
Yeah,
blonde girl, I mean,
yeah, I understand that, right?
reality. And we're going to hear about that. It's going to be sensationalized, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's something else. But
Yeah,
because that's not what trafficking so often looks like, because it looks like building a relationship with a young kiddo or whatever, it looks very different. And so I always say, when we're looking for the wrong thing, when we're
yeah,
looking for the white van to drive by with
yeah,
the creepy
yeah,
predator. I have kids
yeah,
say a predator is like, this super old guy, like 30 in a
yeah,
trench coat. This is what they think. And if that's what we're looking for, we're going to miss what is actually happening, which is the relationship building and the
mm,
grooming process. And that can take a long time. That can take a year or more. And so we often miss it for trafficking because we think, well, that's just a kid that is in a bad situation in a bad relationship. That's not trafficking. Or we see children missing from care, and
yeah,
our reaction is, well, that's just a runaway. And
mm,
so we think about these kids who are really going through very difficult times and living life of trauma and things like that. And we say, well, they're just when in fact we need to recognize,
yeah,
no, first of all, they're a child, human being, they have value, and they're being victimized.
yeah, yeah. You know, this is Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. I'm Dr. Canute White, sitting in with Stephanie Olson. Stephanie, who can they trust? What you have been saying, it seems as if, hey, kiddo, there's no one to trust. What's going on? It's familial. It's in the family. This person who just want to help you. So where the trust comes in there?
Yeah, well, that's really challenging, and one of the things we teach kids instead of stranger danger,
Yeah,
because we know that it's not strangers that are the problem, it's the
right.
people we know. The
Yeah,
majority of trafficked individuals know their trafficker before they are ever trafficked. And they don't typically self-identify as trafficked because of those reasons. So we can't teach kids about stranger danger. We have to teach them who is a trustworthy person.
okay.
And we can't teach, I think so often we teach that a role is trustworthy. So,
Yeah,
teachers are trustworthy and,
yeah,
law enforcement is trustworthy or whatever it may be. And with, teachers, the majority of teachers are amazing.
yeah,
They work hard, they get paid too little, and they love those kids.
yeah,
But there is a small percentage that is willing to victimize our children and do things that we would never imagine. So instead of teaching our kids, hey, this role is always trustworthy, we need to teach our kids what a trustworthy person is.
yeah, yeah,
And then we need to be those safe adults that a kiddo can come to and tell us anything. And we're going to respond with not judgment. We're going to respond with, I always tell parents, make sure you don't react when
yeah,
your kid comes to you and wants to just curl your hair. Your response needs to be, okay, well, gosh, thank you for sharing that.
yes,
Not that there won't be consequences, but
yeah,
that in that moment,
Yeah.
They need to know that they can come to us with anything, that we will listen, that we won't say things like, why can't you be more like your sister? Why can't you do this? Why did you do that? But we're going to react and ask questions in a way that don't um, give them more shame and blame, and say, well, how did that happen to you? How
Yeah.
did that make you feel? What's going on? And we need to believe them.
Yeah.
So
And and
hard.
and and this level of confusion that this sort of situation would create for the children, for the
Yeah.
kids, and so it means then, Stephanie, that a number of our children will fall through the cracks, so to speak. They will just not get help because they're confused. So even if there's somebody who's genuine,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a problem, and they will just not get in the help that they need.
Yeah. Well, and that is so true. And I would add too that
Yeah.
kiddos who have are trauma induced, have trauma induced experiences, they are not the easiest kids to work with. And so when we're in a school and we see kiddos that have had a lot of trauma, they're usually the troubled kids. They're the difficult ones. They're the ones that talk back, or the ones you can't control, so to speak. And that's really exhausting to be a part of their life, or to work with them with a trauma informed lens. But
Yeah.
it is so important, and a lot of them do slip through the cracks because
Yeah.
we aren't always doing our job. We kind of drop the ball sometimes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Wow, interesting, interesting. Kids, if you're watching, I hope that you're listening to this. And if you, kids, children, have questions, ask someone,
Mhm.
talk to mommy, have a conversation with someone who you think you can trust, who you were told to trust. I mean, because trust, we know, is a big part of it, but you have to be careful despite trusting that individual. But talk to someone.
Right.
Hey, this thing about resilience, though, you talk a bit about that, but what does it look like really? What is it? Describe resilience in life. In life, that is.
Yeah. Well, I think resilience is, a lot of people, when they hear resilience, it just means I'm going to push through and I'm going to get this done and I'm going to achieve it. And that's not what resilience really is. Resilience is understanding that we're going to make it through the difficult times, but through making it through those difficult times is a journey, and it's a process. And so there may be times that we're doing really well, and then all of a sudden we fall backwards, but then we pick ourselves up and we move forwards again. And so, I think about when we're talking about resilience with maybe addictions, for example. um, there might be relapses, there might be times where you step back and it's a struggle and you're really not doing well, and then you pick yourself up and you move forward again. So I think that's the biggest part of resilience. It's consistently moving forward
Okay.
with a few steps backwards here and there, but then
Yeah,
continuing that process.
yeah, yeah. Keep going, right?
Keep going.
Yeah. That's about resilience in life. But when we talk about leadership, because my doctorate has a lot of leadership component to it. In fact, I'm also an organizational behaviorist. I talk about a lot about leadership. This resilience in leadership, what it looks like. Talk to me about that.
Well, first, I think it's understanding what leadership is and isn't. I think that sometimes people have this idea that leadership is just it's the big name, the CEO, they're yelling out orders and you do this and you do that. And really, leadership is serving people. It's
Yeah,
helping people come along and drawing people to follow you in a certain area. Now, you can be a leader in work,
yeah,
but a lot of people are leaders in their home. And I hear a lot of times people that I'm not a leader, I'm a follower. But I bet if I can look at your life, there are areas where you really do lead, and you're leading inspires people to follow you. And
Yeah.
that's really what leadership is. It's more of a, I'm going to inspire you to get on my journey and come with.
Yeah, I love that. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said that the greatest leader is not the leader who does the greatest thing, but the leader who help others do
Yes.
the greatest thing.
I love
Yeah.
that. And our job as leaders, I think with my organization, one of my goals is to make my staff better than me. I
Right.
want them to exceed what I do. And that, I think, is a sign of leadership. We want to see people do better than us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you said that, because the next question doubles into that. And this thing about how can we show value and worth to ourselves and others?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Well, showing value to ourselves, I think, is I think a lot of it is giving ourselves grace. We need to look at ourselves. We need to talk positively to ourselves. Sometimes I think we're our own worst enemies,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when we would never talk to our best friend the way we talk to ourselves. And so it is recognizing that we do have value, we do have worth, and we are contributing, or hopefully we are contributing to our communities and our workplaces and our families, and that we have amazing worth. That's the first part, is respecting ourselves
Yeah.
and giving ourselves a little bit grace for making mistakes. How we show value to others, I think, is really honoring them as human beings, respecting our differences.
Mhm.
I think we've kind of gone through a crazy time where we don't respect
Yeah.
each other's differences a whole lot. But if I value you as a human being, frankly, I don't want you to be exactly like me. We probably
Right.
do
Yeah.
well together, right? And
Yeah.
so I've got to respect those differences of yours,
Yeah.
and honor who you are as an individual. And I think that is really how you can show value. I do want
Mhm.
to add, the other way you show value to yourself is setting boundaries.
Okay.
Boundaries are so important. And so it's okay to say no if something isn't right for you. And
Okay.
so setting those boundaries are really important too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay to say no to those things not right for you. But is it that you're looking at the relationship? It's how you value the relationship as well.
Hmm.
Who do you think? Because I would not say no to you if I think say no would damage the relationship. So I'd rather to get hurt, yeah, to be in
Yes.
pain than to say no.
I think we've taught people that it is rude to, so for example, even a
Yeah.
hug, if I were to come up and I'm a hugger, if I were to give you a big bear hug and you were not a hugger, our reaction is usually to, okay, I'm going to hug you anyway, even though I don't want to. And
Yeah.
we've taught people it's rude to say no to those things, but it really is important that we learn to say, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm going to be as kind and respectful as possible, but I'm not a hugger. So, can I wave, or can we do a fist pump, or whatever it
Yeah.
is?
Mhm.
But I think that we need to learn that saying no to people, especially if you want me to do something, I don't think I have the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
Saying no actually opens the door for somebody else
Yeah.
to jump in, who has the capacity and the desire and wants to do that.
Yeah. And to start that conversation. But there's a paradigm shift as it relates to how we socialize our children.
Yeah.
Usually, the 60s children and so on. Why was a taboo? Why? How can you ask why? Just do it, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
no, but no, we tend to have that allowance for our kids. It's okay to ask why, but
It
I'm gonna tell you why.
Yeah. 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 Having those conversations. You can't do this. No, you can't have 15 cookies for dinner.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you do that.
Hmm.
Well, why can't I? Well, that's an important learning
Yeah.
opportunity. if we can turn everything into a learning opportunity, well, you can't have 15 cookies for dinner because, and then you can talk about the nutrition and the, the making you sick and the sugar overhaul, whatever it is. Those are really important conversations to have.
Yeah. So the why, you can turn that into a learning opportunity. And that's very
Absolutely.
important. And don't feel apprehensive because somebody asks why. Not even children, but as adults, I
Yes.
think that I can ask you, why, Stephanie? And you don't say, hey, I said so. So what happened? Just tell me why.
Because I said so. That's why.
Just tell me why so I can understand more. But Stephanie, I'd like to the importance, right? How do we implement the self-care in our lives and in your life in particular? You can perhaps use your life, but
Yeah.
extending it to our lives and how important that is.
Self-care is so critical, and this has taken me a long time to learn, because I think sometimes we always think, okay, we got to grind, we got to do this, we got to do that, and we really do have to recognize that not only do we need to take care of ourselves just because we need to, but when we're dealing with people who are dealing with trauma or anything, there is compassion fatigue. We have that. That's a real thing. And so I think everybody needs to find their own area of self-care. I'm personally a social introvert. That's what I call myself. I love to be around people, but I need my downtime. And
Oh,
so making sure that I have time alone. One of my self-care tools is working out. I love to exercise.
cool.
And I'm a vocalist and I play keyboard. And so spending time doing those kind of things, that's self-care for me.
Mm.
And those are really important pieces of my time. And so everyone has different self-care techniques. Some people take baths, some people go on a hike. And I think, and some people, even like calling a friend, I think that's an important piece of self-care. But I think one of the biggest ways we can do it is turn off our phones, turn off our computers, not during this podcast, but at some
I
point,
know, I know.
our computers, and just be with people we love. That's a huge piece of self-care.
Yeah, I sort of laugh just now because this thing about turn off your phones. Tell me now, Stephanie.
It's hard.
Many of us, it's not a teenager thing, it's not an adolescent thing anymore. Many of us glued to the phone. We
Oh
don't
yeah.
see anybody else around us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's constantly, we've all gotten this. I mean, we have the phantom phone ring. I mean, we have our phones on us so much that we think it rings when it doesn't. And I'm as guilty as the next person. I am one of those people who, I check my phone first thing in the morning and but it's just when I can, and willing to, I will set it away and be able to walk away from it, so that there are those sacred times, dinner time with the family or things like that, where phones are not a part of the moment. And
Yeah.
that is hard sometimes, but it says to the people in our lives, you know what, you're more important than this person who might
Yeah.
reach out to me on my phone.
Yeah. As we touch the phone situation, I'd just like to swing back to the trafficking
Mhm.
situation a bit as it relates to social media.
Yeah.
And that oh, social media, we were talking a little bit about it, or social media impact that human trafficking thing, and how dangerous is social media, and the addiction to social media as it relates to human trafficking.
Yeah. Well, we know that the anxiety and depression among teens has increased tremendously because of the phone, because of social media. And there is a dopamine reaction. We've got this dopamine because we get so many likes and
Yeah,
it
right.
feels good and exciting. And that really does create a form of addiction. And with social media and trafficking, we just recently saw with the pandemic, we were all isolated. We had
Yeah.
no other communication but social media and phones and things like that. And trafficking increased. There was one month specifically during COVID that they saw an increase in trafficking of 42% of reported calls because we're isolated, we're on our phones. Our disclosures with kids have increased tremendously because we have seen kids just really struggle with what's happening, and anxiety is up, depression is up, and being on social media only really increases and impacts that stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Social media is it's a very serious thing. I think many people are addicted to social media now, and
Yeah.
it's a lot, right?
Yeah, I know. It's we take the stand. Social media is great. It's a great
Oh
way to
yeah.
communicate. It's great to connect. I mean, look what we're doing right now.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's informative, but there are a lot of dangerous things that can happen with social media, including addiction and not being able to step away. And so we just need to learn how to safely navigate that. We need to help our kids safely navigate that. It's not going away. So we need to just really learn how to utilize that in a safe way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. But before I'd love to talk a bit about your business, honestly.
Yeah.
But before I do that, let me just go back into your traumatic experiences. I love you to talk about what you want to talk about as it relates to first domestic violence.
Mm. You know, I always considered myself a very strong individual. I'm not sure I was. I had a lot of insecurities, but one of the things that my abandonment created was this desire to be loved, this desire to feel valued. And so, it's the cliche, I looked in it in all the wrong places, or looked
Yeah.
for it in all the wrong places. And when I found somebody who said, I love you, I want to be with you forever, whatever that may look like, I fell hard. And and just like I said with the grooming
Yeah.
process, I think I said that the person who goes into the grooming process is never the same person who
Yeah.
comes out. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with domestic violence and those situations. The person who goes in is never the same person who comes out. And so as the control started to really increase, and you're going to do this, you're going to wear this, you can't talk to this person, and
Yeah.
those types of things, and a lot of emotional abuse, telling me that I'm stupid, or I'm not worth
Yeah.
anything, or whatever it may be. It starts to eat away at everything good. And so any self-worth you had is now even lower, and you're told repeatedly, well, you're not going to be able to find anybody else, and you start to believe those
Yeah.
things. And so it takes a long time to crawl out of a situation like that, and it takes a lot of support systems and a lot of help. So those are really
Yeah.
that really shaped who I was.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned something earlier on. I just like to just bring this into the fold. This thing about repetitive relationship syndrome. It's basically in psychology what it means is that the person keep getting the same partners, same type of partners over and over again, not knowing why, but it just
Yep,
happens. Yeah.
it's what
Um,
you know.
yeah.
Right. Right. And finally, I mean, I say by the grace of God, because healthy attracts healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't find a significantly healthy person and a not healthy person and there's a match typically.
Right.
And so I say by the grace of God, I met my current husband,
Oh,
who is healthy and who not perfect,
yeah.
but definitely an amazing man. And that took, and I was drinking I was an
Okay.
alcoholic, and so that took a lot of work, and those
Yeah.
first few years were just really tough. But 24 years later, we've been able to. I mean, we've got a great marriage. He's a lot of fun to be around.
Cool.
But it took work. It was a
Yeah.
lot of work, and a lot of work to just change my mindset about myself and
Yeah.
relationships and what those were supposed to look like. And it was constant work.
Before you go into the sexual violence part of the traumatic experience, um, would you say, that would you say that you believe in the opinion that relationship is the hardest thing to do? Intimate relationship.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do think I think that people who don't recognize that it is a lot of work to
Yeah.
maintain end up being very disappointed very quickly. I heard somebody say they had been married 50 years, and somebody said, "How did you stay married for 50 years?" And they said, "Well, we just didn't fall out of love at the same time." And I think that's true. I told my there was one woman who I was talking to who said, who was, they were very newly together, and everything was roses and everything was wonderful, and oh, I love and I said, "You let me know after 20 years if you haven't tried to kill your husband in his sleep. Then we can talk."
Yeah, yeah, it can be rough.
It's hard
Yeah,
work, but worth
um,
it.
yeah.
It's
So you
worth
have
it.
to work on it. You have to work
You
on it.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am Dr. Canute White. You're listening to Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. Those persons listening on their favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Audible. I am sitting in with Stephanie Olson, and she is talking now about her dramatic experiences, sexual violence.
Hmm. That is a big one that happens to so many women. And I will tell you my story. It's really very fascinating to
Yeah,
me, because I was raped several times in high school and
yeah,
in college. And what was so incredible was that I didn't realize
yeah.
that it was rape until I was in this work
Okay.
several years later, because what I did was blamed myself. So I was drunk, it was my fault. I shouldn't have been doing that. And I think so many people who experience sexual violence
Mhm.
often don't even realize it's happening because they're blaming themselves
Yeah,
for somebody perpetrating violence on them. And that was a real eye opener for me. I'd always looked at, I mean, I knew it happened, I knew what it looked like, but I never equated it to rape
yeah.
until I was in this work and I was listening to someone talk about trauma. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what it was.
Mhm.
So we have to learn not to take that in and blame ourselves for some of those situations, and really call it what it is.
Yeah, yeah, important. I love how you talk about it, and it's for that other women can understand, can listen, can hear the challenges that others have been faced with. This thing about battered woman syndrome, and
Yeah.
so on. It's happening out there, and
It,
there's this strong silence, and I think that women and the men too,
yes.
because I think that men are being battered as well, right? Need to come out and say, "Hey, I'm having this challenge." And indeed, Stephanie, before you say, and indeed, persons in the GTQ
Mhm.
community, they're being challenged too. So it's not only in the heterosexual zone. Yeah,
Correct.
go ahead.
Well, and that's a really, I want to address that because I think that's really important on both counts, because a lot of times we only talk about sexual violence or dating violence or domestic violence very one-sided. It's the man who's the abuser and the woman who is being abused, and we
Yeah,
look at it that way. But the reality is it can span any gender, any situation. And so there are men that are being abused in relationships, whether in a heterosexual or homosexual relationship, it doesn't matter. But we have told men in our society, suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta deal with it. Men don't cry. And
yeah,
so we don't see those disclosures among men as often. I've also seen a lot of situations where there's domestic violence. There was a couple, and they were gay
yeah,
women, and one of them was extremely abusive, and the other one didn't want to come out and say, gosh, I'm
yeah.
being abused, because it didn't make sense, because we talk about it in this standard way. So whether you're male, female, non-binary, whether you are in a straight relationship or a gay relationship, whatever it is, domestic violence can happen to anybody. And if it is happening to you, please, please, please get help and get support.
Yeah, and I endorse that, Stephanie. Addiction.
Yes, addiction. I think we all have this problem.
Food, sex, all sorts of things.
There's
Yeah.
so many. I jokingly say I don't do moderation well. So I've been addicted to cigarettes. I've been addicted to alcohol. Just all the things. And addiction's really tough, because you're looking for something to numb the pain.
Okay.
And what we need to do, whether it's food, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whatever,
Yeah.
we're looking for something to just numb that pain.
Mhm.
And if we recognize that, that pain is something we need to feel, we actually need to feel it. And so trying to find out, why is it that I'm turning to alcohol every time I'm, happy, every time I'm sad, every time, at some point it becomes just a constant thing. But it usually started somewhere, because I'm feeling this and I don't want to feel that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got you. So this thing about abandonment, uh, what's that? What's going on there with you? What had gone on there with you?
Yeah.
It's related to that.
So one of the things they have said, I said trauma is trauma is trauma. And one of the things I found out much later in life is one of the biggest traumatic events in a child's life is the abandonment of a parent.
Yeah.
And that just creates this empty gap in, something that you just can't fill on your own. And we see that so often. But abandonment doesn't have to be just of a parent. It can be of any loved one. It can be of any, and it's rejection.
Yeah.
It's feeling rejected, and what that experience does. And so I think that it's really important to take, because the abandonment of my biological father affected my entire life, affected my relationships. And finally, what I just actually did a podcast about this on my own, because
Yeah.
finally, what I realized was that I needed to not focus on the abandonment,
Mhm.
but focus on the people in my life who have embraced me.
Yeah.
And that is really important, and not always easy to do, because that abandonment piece, we always look at the stuff that's hard and painful,
Yeah.
but really having to let go of that. I can't change that. I can't fix it. And I don't even need to, because I'm embraced by these people, and I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah.
I'm gonna embrace that myself. So
Wow, wow. You have come from so far, from childhood, and I believe that you talk about resilience. You are there. You really
yeah.
journey through this and a strong woman, and I applaud you. I think you're a very strong woman, and I would like to also lift my hat off to your current husband, and
Ah,
yeah, yeah, I
he's
mean,
awesome.
yeah, I got it. I got it. Yeah, he's working with you, and you're together. All the best to you guys. Tell me though, your business. I don't usually do this on my show to jump right into the guest business, organization, company, but you are doing something that will protect persons who might get themselves involved in human trafficking.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to hear a bit about what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, so the Set Me Free project was born because we saw a lot of good things happening in the area of counter trafficking in the world and in our state and things like that. But what we didn't see a lot of is people talking to the targets of trafficking, which are our youth, and talking to the people who worked with youth. And so that's really where we stepped in. We built a curriculum from third grade through college age for youth. And we go directly into the classroom and talk to kiddos. And we do it in a way that is, despite the topic, we do it in a way that is fun,
Yeah,
that is engaging. We have a lot of activities and we bring a lot of humor into our topic. We always say we don't take ourselves very seriously. We take
yeah,
our topic very seriously, but not ourselves. And so when we have these conversations with the kids, we talk about human trafficking, both sex and labor
right.
curriculum coming out. We talk about social media safety and how to navigate that, and we talk about healthy relationships. And in third grade through six, we're not talking about sex trafficking. We're talking about
Okay.
social media safety. We're talking about empathy. We're talking about consent and responsibility and all of those things. But we just have so much fun. And
Yeah,
what happens is these kiddos recognize that, yes, they can overcome too. And if they're experiencing trauma, they have an opportunity to disclose. I just want to share a story of a little bit about what it
yeah,
looks like, because we had a young boy, we were in a classroom, and it's just one educator in the class with the kids and activities and fun. But I said the bottom line is we teach you have value, you
yeah,
have worth, and that's the foundation of every piece of curriculum we have. And we had this one young boy approach us after the presentation, and he said, I have never heard anyone tell me that I have value. I have never heard that. And so our educator started talking to him, and he started talking to her. And he said, he disclosed that he was in an extremely sexually abusive home
yeah,
and he was going through a very difficult time. So we, of course, reported it. And
yeah,
normally, when that happens, we don't know the end of the story. We
yeah,
don't know, we never hear what happens next.
yeah.
Well, this young boy emailed us and he said, I just
Mm,
wanted you to know I was pulled from my home, but I am safe for the first time in my life, and it's because of you.
mm.
And then he emailed us 1 month later and he said, hey, I wanted to let you know it's my birthday and I'm
Yeah.
having a birthday because of you. And
Wow.
that's why we do what we do. That's it.
I love that. I love that. What's the name of the project? What's the name?
The Set Me Free project. Yep.
Okay.
And we travel. And so we would love to be in schools across the nation.
Right.
But one of the things we also do for those who are not near us is we do agency trainings.
Okay.
So if there are organizations that want to do what we're doing, that are trying to get into their schools with these topics, we actually sell our models. So we
Oh.
we sell the curriculum, but we also sell how to present it, that it's not just you can have great curriculum and crappy presenters and it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So we teach people, this is how to present it, this is how to do it, this is how to get in the schools. and then we support you for a year
Oh,
with the
okay.
curriculum online, and then there's a recertification after that year, and we can just partner with you all the way through.
So it's a train the trainer sort of thing. Yeah.
It's kind of train the trainer, except for they don't train anybody. Um,
Okay.
so we train them, and they
Oh
can
yeah.
take it to the schools, and yeah. So it's awesome.
Wow, wow. Yeah, it is. I mean, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Hats off to you and your project, your organization. I want you, before we sort of wrap up, I want you to talk to a number of persons as if they're in front of you. First, I want you to talk to those um, child, childhood Stephanie, those little Stephanie.
I love that. Well, the first thing I would say is someday you're going to like your hair. That would be the first thing I would tell childhood Stephanie.
Yeah,
And then I would say you are loved and you do have value. And it doesn't matter what happens around you or the circumstances in your life, that's an intrinsic value that you have. And so you don't need to try and prove that you are someone special. You just are. And you don't need to try to become something you're not, because who you are is amazing. That's what I would tell little Steph.
yeah. What would you tell the ladies, women, especially, well, not necessarily married, but those single women, those women who are trying to find self?
Mm. Well, I would say you don't need a partner to be fulfilled and happy and complete. Um, a lot of people have a strong faith, and if that is what helps, I think that's important. But you can be your strong, amazing self without a partner. And so take those relationships slowly. If you find somebody that you think is amazing and you want to spend your life with, great. Take it slow and learn who they are. Watch how they treat other people. Watch how they treat you, and don't settle for less than you deserve. That's what I would say.
Hey, Stephanie, also, I mean, you are amazing,
Thank
and
you. How are you?
what you're doing is amazing too, right? And I have learned a lot. We have learned a lot here on Can Youth Exploration, your topic in a podcast. And Stephanie, I am wishing you all the best in what you have been doing, and and I am sure that you will extend it into Florida,
Yes,
into Jamaica. I love talk about Jamaica.
would
That's
love
my
that.
birthplace, right?
Yes,
Into
I would
Jamaica and
love
the rest
that.
of the
We
Caribbean.
would love to go. Yes, absolutely. We actually are looking at expanding into Florida right now. So
Okay, cool.
that's an option very soon.
Okay. And hopefully in Jamaica as well.
Yeah,
I don't want you to leave out Jamaica, Stephanie.
that would be great. Yes, take us anywhere. We would love to go.
All right, cool. So that's it. And we thank you for coming on Can Youth Exploration to share the whole aspect, the truth about human trafficking, and to share your life as well.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for that.
Thank you for what you do as well.
All right. That was Stephanie Olson. She's such an amazing person, and we hear it in her personality, and her being amazing extend to what she is doing through her project and other aspect of her life to protect others as it relates to human trafficking, and not only to protect others as it relates to human trafficking, but to protect those persons, those females who may be in a domestic violence sort of situation, sexual violence sort of situation, those persons who are addicted to something. She is saying to us, hey, I have gone through that. So here what happened. This is what you should do. This is what I'm suggesting that you do. And don't worry, you will be fine. And I'm hoping that you have listened here on Can Youth Exploration to what she was saying. And share it. Subscribe, that you won't miss any other episodes. We what we do here, we empower others, right? We talk the truth. We listen to the stories of others so that you can be inspired. This was Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. I am Dr. Canute White. And remember, we are still in a pandemic. Remember the hygiene thing, I call it. Wash your hands, but it's more than that. So it's the hygiene thing. And wear your mask. Look at the social distancing. If you have to measure it, because we tend to be getting too close recently. So we still need to maintain that social distance. The vaccine, I had done my two doses of Pfizer, and April and May gone. So do the vaccine. It's in my mind, it's okay, right? I'm not forcing you to do it, but I'm encouraging you from my end to do that, so that we can go back out as soon as possible. We're not sure when all of this will be done, but we have a part to play in getting ourselves back together, not to the normal that we know, but some resemblance of normalcy. Um, hey, take care and bye bye.